power of the heart. Finding your inner wisdom.
The power of the heart.
Finding the power of the
Finding the
heart.
power of the heart.
The power of
Power
the
of the heart. Power of the heart.
让我们寻回心的力量。The
Power
Power
of
of
the
the heart.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Yuru Chao. You are tuning in to the Power of the Heart on Dai Radio. Living Bodhisattvas are joyful at work around the world, going to wherever there is a disaster and wherever they are needed. Now, more than a year later, Tzu Chi volunteers are still with the survivors of Typhoon Haiyan, or locally known as Yolanda, to support survivors in building housing resettlement projects, school renovation, job skill training, and livelihood program. Many volunteers in the Philippines come from wealthy background. Many of them have servants at home. They don't have to do anything. And yet, they eagerly put on Tzu Chi volunteer uniform when they are called to service, and they work hard in the disaster area. It can be drenching rain or blazing sun outside, but nothing can deter them from helping the survivors to recover and rebuild their life. Volunteers understand that it is a blessing to help others, and helping others is also helping themselves. When we see news about disaster, what do we learn? Serving in disaster relief, we learn that natural disasters strike all equally, rich and poor. Regardless of how much money or influence one can have, their karma lead them to be in the destructive path of disaster. Dharma Master Zhen Yan thanks Global Tzu Chi volunteers for their love and the efforts they made in each and every disaster relief project. For Typhoon Haiyan, volunteers are very dedicated to the relief project. We are able to revitalize the cities that have been devastated and provide a housing to a large group of survivors by pulling together all the donations all across the world. All these were made possible by the love and donation of everyone. In our program today, we'll begin with a reading of Dharma Master Zhen Yan's teaching on life economics, about transforming the world with our minds. This reading is provided by Mr. Colin Lagerton.
We come from different places, but we walk a single road, walking towards our real home. Still thought of boat is with us. We come from different places, yet we share one point of view. We create our lives together in the Tzu Chi world. Together we grow. Though the road is filled with hardships, we must bravely continue on. Though at times we're faced with setbacks, with great love we will prevail. I am glad to have you by me, with you here on the Tzu Chi path. I am glad for what we share. The Tzu Chi world shows the power of love. Come from different places, but we walk a single road, walking towards our real home. Still without a boat is with us. We come from different places, yet we share one point of view. We create our lives together in the Tzu Chi world. Together we grow. the road is filled with hardships, we must bravely continue on. Though at times we're faced with setbacks, with His great love we will prevail. I am glad to have you by me, with you here on the Tsuji Pass. I am glad for what we share. The Tsuji world shows the power of love.
Welcome back to The Power of the Heart.
Section 3. The Pull of the Heart. Buddhists believe that all sentient beings have a shared karma. Karma means action. The power of collective karma should not be taken lightly. The more people there are committing wrongdoings, the stronger and more powerful the evil forces. When the pull of evil is strong, it is very likely to trigger disasters and karmic retributions. Karma is like an air current. A typhoon is also a kind of air current. If high pressure is strong enough to suppress low pressure, a typhoon will change its course. All of us should do more good acts, speak more kind words, and think more good thoughts to bring forth the power of blessing. A little virtue and blessing can overcome a disaster. Much virtue and blessing can eliminate disasters. Therefore, the more good people there are doing good deeds, the more blessings will flourish. When blessings flourish, they bring forth good fortune. In our modern world, we need to gather together much good fortune to make the earth healthy, society harmonious, and climate favorable. Yet the only way to gather good fortune is through love. When we inspire people to love, good fortune is increased with every loving heart. Transforming the environment with our minds. When we are discontent, it is easy for our minds to fill with hate. No matter the surrounding environment, the mind is of the utmost importance. If we look around, we see that although some people are rich, they always feel something lacking, as if they can never satisfy their desires. When people are unhappy, they tend to have more afflictions and attract more troubles to entrap themselves. If people are content, they feel grateful. With a grateful heart, their hearts are open and their minds are pure. They can then use their hearts to transform their surroundings. Mr. Zhang grew up in a dysfunctional family. Not long after his birth, his family began to move constantly to escape creditors. More than 10 years later, his family's financial situation improved a little due to his father's hard work. But his father was irresponsible toward his family, and before Mr. Zhang entered the army, his father wrote bad checks in his mother's name. As a result, Mr. Zhang's mother was saddled with the debt and incarcerated. Mr. Zhang's displeasure toward his father turned to hatred. While serving in the military, Mr. Zhang missed his mother terribly, so he deserted. He was constantly on the run. He joined a gang and was eventually captured. Imprisoned for many years, he was nearly 40 years old when released. One can only imagine his pain of spending the prime of his life in darkness. Despite his many transgressions, Mr. Zhang remained filial to his mother. After being released from jail, he and his mother lived together on her government stipend, barely making ends meet. He encountered great difficulty in finding a job. When he did find work as a doorman for a building, he had to leave because he fought with a colleague. Due to the adversities in his life and his work, Mr. Zhang thought of taking his own life. Luckily, his mother detected his intentions and anxiously asked Tzu for help. Tzu volunteers felt great sympathy when they heard what Mr. Zhang had gone through. They organized a family care group to visit him at his home. Seeing the family living in such a shabby place, Tzu volunteers decided to help. After getting the Zhangs back on their feet, the volunteers frequently invited them to the Tzu Dongda campus in Taichung and encouraged them to volunteer in the recycling center. Mr. Zhang witnessed a volunteer in the final stage of spinal cancer who came to the campus every day to garden, water the vegetables, and do recycling. Although stiff in his movements, this volunteer had shown up every day since he was diagnosed with the disease 3 years earlier. He did not waste a minute or a second of his time. Mr. Zhang realized the importance of cherishing his life. Originally, he planned to ask Siji to take care of his mother and walk away. After seeing the other volunteer cherish his life so dearly while dying of cancer, he began to understand that we do not have ownership of our life, only the privilege to use it. He became a Siji volunteer and accompanied his mother in doing recycling work. Now he has a steady job in a restaurant and lives a peaceful life with his mother. He has even become a member of Siji's Zicheng Faith Corps. Through these experiences, his life has been profoundly transformed. Mr. Zhang said that Siji volunteers are so committed to recycling, they pick up even a small piece of wasted paper for the sake of protecting the earth. Though he felt that his own life had been a waste, Siji was able to recycle him and make him into a useful person. This testifies that when you change your state of mind, the environment is changed too. Once you have set your heart to overcome challenges, there is nothing that cannot be overcome. When you turn your mind toward virtue, life will be peaceful. This same mother and son used to have a hard life. Mr. Zhang was trapped in a dark place and could not come out. Now, by changing his perspective, he is living a stable life. His heart is filled with love, so he is able to help others, even though he is still not well off. Once we have a positive thought, our mind changes accordingly and the environment transforms too. When we face everything with a positive attitude, we forgo our hatred and embrace love instead. In doing so, we liberate ourselves from the darkness, and our lives become bright and beautiful. The Buddha said, "The mind alone creates all." When an individual shifts his perspective toward doing good and applies that virtue to everything, then nothing is difficult to handle. Similarly, we can apply this principle to the whole earth and its abnormal climate and frequent natural disasters. These can all be mitigated if everyone maintains a virtuous mind. In fact, global warming originated in people's minds. When our minds are out of balance, our tempers are unstable, and our dispositions are discordant. We easily commit wrongdoings, create bad karma, and damage the earth. How can we expect the weather to be favorable? If everyone maintains a love that is selfless, harmonious, and pure, then an effect will come into being. We should not take this effect lightly, because the power generated from its chain reaction can influence the entire human race. In science, there is the butterfly effect. Though a butterfly is an insignificant insect, the slight flutter of its wings can cause giant waves. How much more powerful an effect would our hearts generate? No matter where we live, we must all take on the human mission and become seeds of love. The Sutra of Innumerable Meanings states, "One gives rise to infinity. Infinity begins with one." Our love can expand from one seed and develop into myriad seeds of love. When we combine the love of everyone, we can work together to establish a loving environment. As long as we reduce our greeds and desires, refrain from indulging in pleasures, and show respect to one another, we can make our world a pure land. The tug of war between good and evil. There is a proverb, "A single good deed eliminates 1,000 disasters." This does not mean that when we do good deeds we will not get sick or suffer from disasters. All sentient beings have a shared karma, and the entire universe is always engaged in a tug of war between good and evil. A place with more benevolence will have fewer disasters, and a place with more evil will have more disasters. In a tug of war, the side with more people will have more strength and is more likely to win. Therefore, a region with more good people will be more peaceful. Even when disasters happen, the suffering will be less. Confucius said, "How can he be considered wise who does not choose to dwell in moral surroundings?" This advises us to carefully choose the place in which we live. We should select a place with many virtuous people, for, as Confucius said, it is the moral character of a neighborhood that constitutes its excellence. Indeed, A place with more virtuous and moral people is the most beautiful place, and choosing to reside in that place is a wise choice. How do we make a place into a village of virtuous people? When many good people encourage each other, their numbers will grow. When everyone does good deeds, the effect will start. From 1 hand to 100 hands to 1,000 hands, and eventually to an infinite number of hands. These hands will be able to help the needy and save those who are deluded. Typhoon Morakot is a good example of this. In August 2009, after the typhoon hit southern Taiwan, numerous Tzu Chi volunteers went to the disaster area to help clean the homes of the victims. Because the area was covered in mud, volunteers had difficulty walking there, let alone carrying heavy buckets full of mud. But with so many people eager to help, volunteers formed a long line and passed buckets of mud down the line. When everyone works in unison, damaged homes can be rebuilt. One volunteer was always very dedicated in videotaping Tzu Chi's activities for the purpose of keeping history. When his house was flooded, the one thing he thought of rescuing was his video camera. Though water had not receded from his own home, he immediately joined the disaster relief effort to document the events. His story was quite touching. None of the Tzu Chi volunteers complained, "I'm doing Tzu Chi volunteer work. How come my house is also flooded?" This is because good karma did not triumph over bad karma. To eradicate disasters in the world, we must inspire everyone to nurture a good heart and encourage people to do good deeds. When we emphasize good, not evil, and positively influence one another, the power of benevolence will increase. A good or bad surrounding has an even greater influence on the individual. At one of the Tzu Chi General Hospitals, a volunteer once discovered that a middle school student had a gun in his school bag. The volunteer quickly approached the student to ask why he carried a gun. The student replied frankly that it was a toy gun. Sensing the boy's behavior was going astray, the volunteer wanted to counsel him. He asked the boy about his family and his school. The boy was candid and told the volunteer that his school was full of violence. He left home to live in a rented apartment. He even told the volunteer that he was a gang leader and that he could collect protection money. The volunteer was worried about the boy's ignorance. Patiently, he told the boy many stories, such as the criminals he had seen at the hospital wearing foot shackles and handcuffs. It was too late to feel sorry then. They would live in remorse for the rest of their lives. The boy felt that the volunteer really loved and cared about him, so he took his advice to heart. The volunteer told him, "You must change your ways. In a tug of war between good and evil, a good friend will give you a helping hand, but a bad friend will drag you down. Come to see me whenever you have a question or are confused." From then on, the boy called the volunteer when he ran into problems. Sometimes he went to see the volunteer in person. 2 years later, the boy invited the volunteer to his graduation ceremony. The volunteer was very touched when the boy was honored as a model student. After the ceremony, the volunteer asked the boy about his plans. He said that he had already found a job and wanted to work for a while. The volunteer said, "Working is good, of course. One has the chance to excel in any profession. But I am afraid that you may be dragged down again." The boy replied, "Never, because there are now benefactors in my life. Once you told me about the tug of war between good and evil. I have so many Tzu Chi volunteers behind me, supporting me. I am confident that I can take care of myself." He also admitted that members of his old gang still contacted him often, but he had changed his cell phone number and was focused on being a good person. Other than the power of benevolence given him by Tzu Chi volunteers, whenever he felt confused and alone, he would read Jingsi aphorisms. This was also a positive influence for him, so he felt confident about himself. A kind word can influence people positively. Our campaign, Good Words Fill the Streets, has received much support from taxi drivers and tour bus operators who post Jingsi aphorisms in their cabs and buses and take these good words anywhere they go. Tzu Chi volunteers from different communities have shared many touching stories about this campaign. They said that many people have been changed by these Jingsi aphorisms. Many become friendlier to one another because they began to speak kind words and ceased fighting and competing with others. As they became more humble, their world became more spacious too. How beautiful this kind of society is. Not only are good and evil locked in a tug of war, calamity and blessing are as well. Wrongdoings create calamity, and good deeds create blessings. We need more people doing good deeds to create more blessings. Everyone is a farmer tilling the field of blessing. We must work hard to spread the seeds of love so that there will be more living bodhisattvas. A good environment inspires virtue. After the 1999 earthquake in Taiwan, we took on the challenge of rebuilding 50 schools, an endeavor called Project Hope. One entrepreneur at that time wanted to cover the entire cost of rebuilding one specific school. But Tzu Chi commissioners suggested that he create affinities with more people. By not specifying the school on which to spend his money, he would be participating in the reconstruction of all the schools. He gladly accepted the proposition and donated his money to Project Hope. This exemplifies the act of taking from society, then giving back to society. When we profit from society, we should give back to society when needed. Nowadays, many entrepreneurs and people in society have already turned their thoughts to altruism. If more people can be called to do good deeds, the power of benevolence will be even greater. Project Hope is not only about rebuilding schools, but also making school campuses beautiful. As education should develop students' character and morality in addition to knowledge, the school itself should provide a positive learning environment so that as soon as students and teachers enter the school, their hearts and spirits can be softened and beautified by the environment. We built the schools with attentiveness and dedication. All the buildings were made sturdy and earthquake resistant so that these schools will withstand the passage of time. They were made to be functional and attractive even after 100 years, like works of art to brighten up their surroundings. Over the course of 2 years, 50 schools were completed one after another, like fine works of art emerging from the rubble. I have heard so many touching stories about these schools. I remember once I was traveling in central Taiwan and took a detour, as I often do, to visit a school. The school had just let out for the day, so I decided to get out and walk around for a little bit. Some administrators were still at work. One of them accompanied me on a walk around the school's central courtyard. As we passed the sports field, I saw students playing sports there. It was gratifying to see students willing to stay at school after classes had ended. I also heard one of the principals say that his students asked whether they could stay at school after class. It is certainly the result of a positive learning environment when students are willing to stay long after the school day ends. In addition to the buildings, there are many intangible qualities associated with a school. More than a decade has passed since the earthquake. Many principals from these 50 schools have said to me, "Master, our students have been doing very well since the school was built." The earthquake has released the love of the public to provide students with a positive learning environment. Principals and teachers have also changed their attitude in teaching. The students were all happy to learn. Those who were in primary school at the time are now in college. Many of them have become Tzu Chi collegiate volunteers. In 2008, when a major earthquake struck China's Sichuan province on May 12th, we in Taiwan were as shocked as those in mainland China. Taiwanese businessmen in mainland China immediately mobilized and traveled to the disaster areas in Sichuan. 2 days later, Tzu Chi volunteers from Taiwan also arrived. They immediately took action to comfort survivors and provide them with hot meals. They also invited locals to volunteer for their own communities. When emergency relief ended and Tzu Chi volunteers took leave of Sichuan, they left behind the spirit of volunteerism. Their volunteer work was kept alive by local volunteers and a group of local youths who took over the job of caring for seniors. When Tzu Chi volunteers returned to Sichuan after some time, they were pleased to see that the locals now live a stable life and that the seeds of volunteerism have taken root, so the Tzu Chi volunteers began to teach them recycling. When the Lo Shui Community Center was complete, it became a recycling station for collecting and sorting recyclables. Those living in temporary housing have never severed their connection with Tzu Chi. They have participated in discussion groups to learn how to apply Buddhism in their daily lives. They have come to understand that everyone can be a living bodhisattva and help others. Although they used to have bad habits such as playing mahjong, drinking, and smoking, they were willing to quit them all in order to become Tzuchi volunteers and adhere to Tzuchi's 10 precepts. One elder commented, "I am very happy to do Tzuchi work. I enjoy sorting recyclables. I am especially pleased to know that plastic bottles can be used to make eco-friendly blankets. We can help people and help Mother Nature at the same time." He made a vow to quit gambling. Everyone knew that he was a man of his word, so they encouraged him to go further. "Will you make a vow to quit smoking and drinking as well?" He said that this was a difficult task, but many people encouraged him to make one more vow. "All right, I will not drink for 2 days a week." Everyone gave him a round of applause and asked him to quit smoking as well. "This is extremely difficult," he said. "How about quitting for 1 day a week?" He yielded under everyone's encouragement. "All right, I will not drink 2 days out of the week, and not smoke 1 day out of the week." After a period of time, since he went to the recycling station every day, he did not have any chance to drink. He lived each day happily, and his mind was clear. Eventually he quit smoking, drinking, and gambling altogether. His wife said that his temper had changed too. His story shows that it really is not difficult for an ordinary person to become a bodhisattva. All in all, we can see that the influence of our environment is very strong. To develop one's love is to spread the seeds of love. When everyone has love in their hearts, then this love will become the force of virtue.
Holy